Welcome to Infinitive Stories. Today, we're sharing a powerful and emotional tale that's both heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time. It's a story about standing up against injustice, the unexpected kindness of strangers, and the incredible strength of my son, James. It all began on what started as an ordinary afternoon, but it quickly turned into an experience that changed the way we see the world around us. It was a perfect day. The sky was clear. The sun was warm, but not too hot, and the light breeze made everything feel fresh and alive. James, my 16-year-old son, and I had decided to go for our regular afternoon walk to the park. Now, you might be wondering, why mention the weather? Well, because it was a beautiful, peaceful day, a stark contrast to the ugly situation that was about to unfold. You see, James was born blind. He's never known what it's like to see the world with his eyes, but that doesn't mean he doesn't experience it in a way that's just as rich, just as beautiful. He's incredibly attuned to the sounds around him, to the smells in the air, and to the sensations beneath his fingertips. He's learned how to navigate the world in his own unique way, using his other senses to compensate for the ones he's never had. On these walks, he would always point out the small details that most people wouldn't even think about. He'd comment on the sound of a bird chirping, the feel of the wind against his skin, or the smell of fresh coffee brewing as we passed by the local cafe. This particular day was no different. We were walking through our neighborhood when we passed by a newly opened cafe. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee was in the air, and James smiled. "Mom, I can smell the coffee beans roasting," he said, his face lighting up with the simple joy of experiencing something so familiar yet so special to him. As we continued walking, we were just about to cross the street toward the park when suddenly, we heard a voice, loud, sharp, and demanding. "Hey, you, yes, you." The voice was coming from a woman who, at first glance, looked like she was on a mission. She was in her mid-40s, dressed in a crisp blazer and a pencil skirt, her hair pulled into a tight bun. Her demeanor was intense, and as she marched toward us, I could see the anger written all over her face. At first, I thought maybe she was just upset with someone else, but as she got closer, her eyes locked onto James, and she started shouting at him. "Are you deaf as well as blind?" she snapped, her voice full of venom. I was taken aback, not only by the words, but by the cruelty with which she spoke them. Before I could even process what was happening, she continued her tirade. "I've been waiting for my coffee for 10 minutes, and you're just standing there doing nothing. Get back inside and do your job." I was stunned. James hadn't done anything wrong. He was simply standing there with his cane, his face serene as he listened to the world around him. He wasn't working at the cafe. He was just walking past, enjoying his moment in the world. But this woman had decided, for reasons I couldn't understand, that he was somehow to blame for her impatience. I quickly stepped forward, hoping to defuse the situation. "Excuse me, ma'am," I said, my voice calm but firm. "My son doesn't work here. He's blind, and we were just walking by." But the woman wasn't listening. Her face twisted with disdain, and she hissed, "Blind? What kind of excuse is that? If he's blind, why is he even out here in public? He should be at home, out of the way where he's not bothering anyone." I felt like I'd been slapped in the face. Not only was she insulting my son, but she was belittling him simply because he wasn't conforming to her expectations of what someone with a disability should be doing. Her words were harsh, ignorant, and deeply hurtful. But what happened next? Well, it was even worse. In an act of sheer audacity, this woman raised her hand and slapped James on the arm. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was as if the world had stopped. My heart was racing, and I saw James flinch, his face a mixture of confusion and pain. The crowd that had gathered around us gasped in disbelief. One man shouted, "You can't just hit someone. What is wrong with you?" Others began to pull out their phones to record what was happening. Some moved closer to shield us from the escalating scene. I rushed to James's side, wrapping my arm around him. But before I could say anything, a young man in his early 30s, the cafe manager, came rushing out of the cafe. He was wearing an apron, looking flustered and upset. "What's going on here?" he demanded, clearly trying to assess the situation. The woman turned to him, her voice dripping with entitlement. "Your employee has been standing outside doing nothing while I've been waiting for my coffee. How dare he ignore me?" The manager looked at James and me, then back at her, and said firmly, "Ma'am, he doesn't work here. He's a customer just like you." The woman's face turned bright red with embarrassment, but she didn't back down. "Well, how was I supposed to know that?" she sneered. "He should have said something instead of standing there like an idiot." The manager's patience seemed to wear thin, and his tone became more serious. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We don't tolerate this kind of behavior here." At that moment, the crowd, which had been quietly watching, began to voice their support for us. People started murmuring their disapproval of the woman's actions. Some shook their heads in disbelief, while others offered words of comfort to James. The cafe manager stood his ground, refusing to let the woman intimidate anyone. Finally, the woman realized she was no longer in control of the situation. With a huff, she turned on her heel and stormed off, muttering under her breath about how she would never come back to the cafe. I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief, but also anger, that someone could treat another human being with such cruelty. Once the woman had left, the manager turned to us, his expression softening. "I'm so sorry that happened," he said sincerely. "Are you both okay?" James nodded, his calm demeanor returning. "I'm okay, thank you," he said, his voice steady and composed despite the ordeal. The manager, looking genuinely apologetic, offered us free drinks as an apology. We graciously accepted, and as we sat down to enjoy our beverages, several people from the crowd came over to check on James, offering words of kindness and admiration for how he had handled the situation. The next day, I was surprised to receive a call from our HOA, Homeowners Association. Word of the incident had spread, and they wanted to make sure James was okay. They also informed us that they were implementing new community guidelines to promote exclusivity and address public misconduct. It was an unexpected but heartwarming gesture, showing that the community was committed to ensuring respect and kindness for everyone, regardless of their abilities. As I reflected on the events of that day, I was filled with pride for James. His strength, his resilience, and his ability to stay calm in the face of such ignorance were truly inspiring. He didn't let that woman's words or actions affect him. When I asked him how he felt about everything that had happened, he simply said, "Mom, some people just don't understand, but that's okay. As long as we stand up for ourselves and others, we'll be fine." It wasn't just about Karen and her behavior. It was about the power of community, the strangers who came to our defense, the cafe manager who intervened, and the support we received from those around us. It was about standing up for what's right, even when it feels uncomfortable or scary. And it was about the resilience of people with disabilities, who, despite facing so many challenges, continue to inspire us with their strength and grace. James may be blind, but his view of the world is clearer than most people's. He sees the goodness in people, the strength in standing up for what's right, and the power of kindness. He's taught me so much, and I hope this story inspires you too. Thank you for joining us today on Infinitive Stories. If this story touched your heart, made you think, or made you realize how important it is to stand up for others, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We'll continue sharing stories that remind us all of the power of community, empathy, and resilience. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and remember, every story has the power to make a difference.